everybody, welcome back. It's Peyton from Sovereign Self. I'm glad to be back in the swing of things, making some videos. I was out of town for about 2 weeks doing some travel, and then when I got home, I had a whole list of videos that I'd hoped to get made. And of course, as usual, when you plan to do those kinds of things, you get sick. So I spent about a week recovering from the seasonal crud. So now here I am back, and I have a couple of videos that I'm going to be making. I should have probably 4 or 5 videos over the next 2 weeks that I'll be able to put together. So I wanted to just jump back in and start with the video that I'm probably going to title, I Bought the Deck I Said I'd Never Buy. And I don't know if anybody else has experienced this where, you tend to prefer a certain style of art or a certain feel for a deck. And you see certain decks and you're just like, okay, everybody's raving about this deck, but I just can't stand it. There's something about it. The art style doesn't jive with me. I just don't see myself ever purchasing this deck. And I had a deck that was the number one on that list for me. And that deck was the Morgan Greer. And this is a deck that is really well loved. I think I've seen tons of videos on it in the YouTube community, and I never could get past the sort of the retro silly feel that I got from the art. I'm not somebody that gravitates towards sort of like the 70s, like early 80s aesthetic. Even if you really go back more towards like the late 60s stuff, like the psychedelic colors and the really sort of bold graphic stuff, that really is not something that I naturally gravitate towards. And when I saw the Morgan Greer, really all I could see was that magician card. And I'll show you that in a minute. But if you're familiar with the Morgan Greer, you know exactly what I'm saying. It was just, there was something that felt kind of schlocky and silly, and I just could not get past that. So every time I would see somebody with the Morgan Greer, I'm like, wow, I really wish I could love this deck, but I just can't get past the art. It's too 70s. I just can't deal with it. But recently, Simon from Hermit's Cave had done a video where he did a side-by-side comparison of the full-size deck and the deck in a tin. And this deck, which it's published by US Games, you can get the standard edition. That's just the plain tuck box, and then they offer the tin size. And I watch all of Simon's videos, even if it's a deck that I know I have no interest in. I'm still gonna watch. So I watched it, and I'm thinking, oh Lord, I'm gonna sit through here and watch another Morgan Greer video. I don't know why I'm doing it, but I love Simon, so I'm gonna watch it. And I don't know what it was, but something struck me very differently about the deck as Simon was talking about it. And maybe it's just the way Simon presents things, I don't know. But I started to look at the art and I'm like, something, it's really leaping out at me. Like, I'm noticing things about this deck that I've never really noticed. And maybe it's just because I put up that block and I'm like, no, this is a silly deck. I don't want this deck. But I really started to pay attention to the art, and I found myself being very drawn towards it. And I'm thinking, oh Lord, no, this deck is the one deck I said I would never buy. It's just too silly. But maybe I should rethink this. So I watched a few other videos, and another one of the ones that I watched was Kelly Bear's walkthrough of her tinned version of the Morgan Greer. And she said verbatim exactly how I felt about this deck. She made a comment basically more or less that this deck is full of 1970s porn mustaches. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly why I could not get on board with this deck, because I just looked at the magician and it was like a slim version of Ron Jeremy. I just could not get that image out of my head. But all of a sudden I'm noticing the art and I'm feeling really drawn towards it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to get this deck. The deck I said I'd never get. And I'm going to give it a try. If I don't like it, it's not an expensive deck. I can always pass it along. So I got the deck, and I have been working with the deck. This, by the way, is not going to be an unboxing of this deck. I am going to do a quick flip through of the deck, just in case you're one of the maybe 2 people on the planet who've never seen this deck. But I've been working with this deck exclusively so far this month. And I am really amazed at how differently this deck behaves, as opposed to kind of the impressions that I got from the artwork. And yes, this is a very nostalgic feeling deck, but this deck has a really warm, really sweet, really open voice to it. And as I walk through, I'll point out a reason that I came to realize that I think this deck finally got my attention, and a reason why I'm enjoying it so much. So first off, as I said, this is a US Games deck. I'm not going to show you the tuck box or any of that. It's a standard tuck box. It's not anything special. You get in the pack, you're going to get an artist card and a title card. The artist card has just got a quick explanation of the artist and some of his background. And then you're just going to get the standard title card. This is the backing of the deck. And this is what I am affectionately calling the Shazam backing. It's just like, it's so retro. It's so like 70s, 80s. It's super cute. It does not play so well color-wise on my camera, because right now I'm just working off a laptop setup, and this is a complete shite camera. You're not getting any good color off of it. But it looks a lot lighter here, but this backing is actually a deeper, kind of like a deep cornflower blue, but it's a darker color than what is showing up here. I'm absolutely thrilled that I got this deck. The art, like I said, it is, it's kind of a throwback. But there is something really appealing about the facial expressions in this deck. And one thing that I noticed as I worked through here is that this deck is very facey. And if you've seen any one of my other videos on my channel, you'll know that I'm very, very attached to the Tarot of the Hidden Realm. That's what my home deck is. If you want to call something a soul deck, Tarot of the Hidden Realm is definitely a soul deck for me. And it is a very facey deck. It concentrates a lot on the facial features of the people. There are not a lot of props in terms of the background in that deck. And while this deck does have probably, more illustrative stuff going on, it does have more props. But I've found that there is a real concentration on the faces in this deck. And I think that's what made this deck finally click with me. The faces are just so sweet. And there's something really warm and very, very people-like about this illustration. Where in some decks, it's like, okay, it's a very pretty picture, but you don't get a lot of the human aspect of the illustration. I really got a lot of the human in this deck. So this is the Fool. And I'm sorry again, because I know this color is complete crap on here. But this is just like, this is the sweetest Fool. It doesn't have sort of that sense of foreboding that some fools can have. This is a really open, forward-looking Fool. And I just think the illustration is just gorgeous. And here you get the card that just kills me every time I look at it. And this is so funny because the Magician is actually is a card that is sort of a deal breaker for me when I'm selecting decks. And I think that's part of the reason why I just couldn't do this deck before. But this guy's kind of grown on me a little bit. My initial sort of like, holy God, the mustache has sort of gone away. And now I can kind of take in the entirety of the picture. And it's, this is a Rider-Waite deck. You're not going to get a lot of crazy off-the-wall imagery here. This is a really traditional RWS deck. just reimagined. But this is, I mean, this is a very, very classic magician. And he's grown on me. So I can look at him now and be like, I can deal with you now, and it's not like a 1970s porn nightmare. So here is the High Priestess, and like I said, again, my color is terrible. This is a very vibrantly blue card. It really leaps off of the card. A lot of different tones of blue. There is a real sense of the solemn about this High Priestess. You still get the, the traditional feel, the scroll, her feet on the moon. You get the black and white pillars. You get the veil draped in the background. This is a very self-possessed, very confident High Priestess. And I've noticed in some other decks, you don't tend to get that sense of confidence. In some, it's definitely a sense of the mystical, but I really get a very strong, confident sense from this High Priestess, which I really like, because I feel, especially if you think back to the Marseille style decks, where this is the Papess. That's an authoritative position, and I've always viewed the High Priestess as an authoritative card. So I really enjoy this depiction, and like I said, if you are able to see these the colors of the cards in person, because they don't translate well here, this is an extraordinarily vibrant card, which I really, really enjoy. A beautiful, very voluptuous, really earthy Empress. You have the eagle on the shield. You've got the blooming flowers. She's very round. It's a beautiful natural scene. So just a really nice Empress card. The Emperor, I enjoy that this Emperor is an older man. I wouldn't go so far as to say this deck is really diverse, but you have to take into consideration that the original publication date on this deck was 1979. So I wouldn't expect to see a ton of diversity, but given the time period that it was released in, I do find this to be a fairly diverse deck, all things considered. So you will see some different body shapes, you will see some different ages, and there is at least one card in here that when we get to that card, you'll notice one different race represented, which is nice. But like I said, that's actually probably a pretty progressive deck for 1979. But this, even though this is a gray-haired emperor, he's still very strong. These are really bold reds and oranges in this card, so you really get that the Aries, the Mars representation here, which I like. Very traditional Hierophant with the keys, the hand and the blessing. Really not anything crazy going on with this card. The Lovers. I love this Lovers card. One thing, and I know you probably will not be able to see the detail on my video, but the guy in the Lovers card has a hairy butt. I think that's hilarious. But this is a really sensuous, really voluptuous Lovers card. You've got the lilies. They look beautiful, and I think this is a gorgeous illustration. You're missing the angel, but honestly, that doesn't bother me. I read enough of these cards to know, the association with the higher self and choice. But I think this representation of the Lovers is just gorgeous. Also, really, really strong Chariot. The horses look like they're in motion, which is great because a lot of Chariot cards look super static. This really has that sense of momentum and motion, which is great. When you're able to zoom in on these cards, you can really see a lot of the detail. I think this is just a really, really effective Chariot card. Gorgeous Strength card. Kelly Fitzgerald from The Truth and Story talks about this quite a bit, and I totally agree that I'm not in any way a fan of the Strength cards where you see somebody prying the mouth of the lion open. And while this lion does look a little bit like he may have dropped acid within the last couple of hours, it's enough to where it doesn't feel like there's a lot of force. She almost looks like she might be trying to gently close the lion's mouth or to soothe the lion, and I can definitely deal with that. Lots of beautiful colors. I'm typically not a fan of yellow, which is sort of crazy considering that my original deck was like the good old plaid back U.S. Games Rider-Waite that's like blinding yellow everywhere. I guess I've just gotten used to it over the years. But in this deck, there is a lot of yellow, but I don't mind it. It's not so off-putting that it seems like it washes out everything else. Here we got a really traditional hermit. I really like the dark background on the hermit. In some decks, it almost looks like daytime in the background. It's not that that is a positive or negative in any way. It's just I tend to prefer the dark. You have the hexagram and the lantern. Really traditional, but a really, really well done hermit. Wheel of Fortune. I think this is the greatest wheel. I love it. And Kelly Bear had mentioned in her deck too that this looked almost like a Monty Python sketch. This is completely true because you've got like this Terry Gilliam kind of hand of God cranking over here, and these guys are up here having a great time, and this guy is just biting the dust. So I think it's a hilarious take on this card. Just a nice Justice. Really traditional, kind of has that sort of Maleficent vibe going on with the wimple, which I don't mind at all. Super traditional Hanged Man. Death. This is not my favorite Death card, but I can deal with it. He's sort of like, it's like, hi, I'm Death. But it's like you've got the red in the background. You don't really see a sunrise in this one, which is kind of unfortunate. I really like to see the sun coming up, but this one, I can deal with this. This is a pretty traditional death, all things considered. Temperance. This is a very mannish looking temperance, which I don't mind because I know in a lot of decks there is, because you're dealing with sort of the alchemy of the soul, and there is an attempt to make this a genderless person. To me, this feels more mannish, but I'm not opposed to that. Otherwise, it's a really typical temperance card. This devil, y'all, this devil is hilarious. Every time I look at this devil, first of all, I cannot take this devil too seriously because it's like he looks like his name should be Snagglepuss the devil, like with these crazy little fangs down here. Otherwise, I think this devil is a riot. This is really a serious throwback kind of image, and I can't even be upset when I see this guy in a reading because he just cracks me up. Beautiful tower card, really traditional, lot of movement. I love the waves. Just a lot of motion in the card, which I really like to see. Gorgeous, again, super traditional star card. Nice, voluptuous, very earthy, really, really pretty. Again, super traditional imagery with the moon card. Just really well done. This card also is super, super blue when you see it in person. The sun. Now, I love this. Again, I'm referring to Kelly from The Truth and Story. I hate babies on horses. I just hate them. They're in all the decks. I can deal with it. I just hate them. I love the sun card. Lots of sunflowers. This is a super orange card in person, and I really like that. The only thing that I don't get is like this is a super serious thing going on down here, which I don't really get for the sun card, but it's okay. I can work with that. Judgment is like, yay, these are some happy folks. And I really like that for Judgment card because most Judgment cards are really super somber, especially with the heavy Christian overtone of the typical traditional Judgment card. But this really has a lot more the sense of the eagerness to rebirth, joy and recreation. So I like that. Also, it's not gray people. They're blue. I'm preferring the blue. Really pretty, typical world card. I enjoy the traditional depiction, and I enjoy that this person is not like weirdly like a non-identifiable gender, and I understand the concept behind that. But some cards can pull that off, and some cards end up with just this hideous looking person on the card, and they completely miss the mark. But this is a really, really lovely representation. So we move into the minors, and I'm just going to flip through these really, really quick. Like I said, you'll notice in these that you've got a lot of close-up on the people, which I really like. I love this Five of Wands. This is a really, really great card. Again, you're getting a lot of those mustaches, but I'm not even mad about it now. I'm kind of enjoying them. I really love this Seven of Wands. There's something about this guy's face, and I know it's difficult to see on here, but he has the most engaging face, and he really looks like he's conveying that sense of concentration that you get in the Seven. Beautiful movement. Again, I'm so enjoying the very close-up aspect of this deck, and I did not see this as a deck that I would ever be able to bond with, and I'm so enjoying the fact that I've bonded with it so quickly, and it's really become like a fast favorite. All of the courts in this deck are just super well done. You really get a sense of the elemental associations, and they come across really humanly. You really get a strong sense of the person from these. Again, the aces, super traditional, very similar to the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Just gorgeous faces. These cards are really lushly done. I enjoy that there's a lot of greenery, a lot of vegetation. One thing that I notice is when there's a lot of oak in a deck, and I've noticed a lot of oak leaves in this deck. Oak is a tree that I associate with really strongly. So when I start to see a lot of oak leaves, this guy's crazy. Kelly Bear had made a comment that this guy's, the red across his face, she said he drank everything that was in the cups, and that's exactly what it looks like. Really, really happy 10. Love this page. I love this, and it's a girl, which I enjoy seeing a variety of genders in the courts for the pages and the knights especially. And this one is just, I love the contemplative look on her face. Really, really beautiful queen. Kind of got a really strong Aphrodite vibe from her. This guy's face to me looks like a Ken doll. And I get a lot of associations with things from this deck, and there's a couple more that I'll point out as I go. Really, really beautiful too. Again, there you go. You got some oak leaves in this one. Again, like I said, my camera does not do this deck justice. This is a vibrant, very, very beautifully colored deck. And this one, I really love that you get the sense of the calm water and the turbulent water here. So you're getting a really nice sense of the imagery from Pixie's interpretation. And I love that this, Arwen Lynch sometimes refers to the Seven of Swords as the sneaky bastard card, which I totally agree with. But I really love this interpretation because this does not look like the sneaky bastard. Like, you really have to read this one in terms of what the context is, whether this is malicious or necessary action. And I enjoy that as not being very well defined one or the other in the card. Gorgeous 8. The Nine of Swords is a deal breaker card for me in any deck. It's one of the cards in the minors that I associate with the most closely, and it's a crucial card for me. And I really, really enjoy this interpretation of it. Crazy, like super blue dead guy. Again, you just get these great faces. These mustaches, y'all, they're just awesome. The Queen of Swords is what you typically see portrayed as the art on the box for the tote box. So it's an image that a lot of people will probably be familiar with, even if they're not familiar with the deck. More, you see more oak. This is just, and it's wheat, like this gorgeous, gorgeous King of Swords. I love these faces. And I think that the facial expressions in this deck really add a lot to the meaning. Another deal breaker card of mine, the Five of Pentacles. This is a beautiful, beautiful representation of that card. But these people, they just have the most lively expressions. And I think that adds so much to this deck. And here you see, as I said, there's not a lot of different races, but you do have one African-American woman represented here, which is really nice. That's one thing that I look for in decks, is whether or not you have a wide variety of skin tones, body shapes, races, cultures. I love to see a wide variety of diversity in a deck. And so for a 1979 deck to see a woman with dark skin in here, to me, that's really awesome. And I love the fact that she's the Nine of Pentacles. And we're coming up here. I love this knight. He just looks so strong. Really lovely Queen of Pentacles. She's very contemplative. But this one kills me. If anybody is familiar, in the 1980s, there was the cartoon series He-Man, the Masters of the Universe. Like, please tell me that's not He-Man. That straight up looks like He-Man from the comic. That's the first thing that I thought of when I saw this card. And I still think every time I get it, this is He-Man. And my husband, who is not a tarot reader, not affiliated with tarot in any way, he's very encouraging of me. But when I showed him this deck, and I'm like, okay, this looks straight up like He-Man. And he said, okay, from now on, when you read for me, you have to use this deck. So there you have it. It's a really quick flip through of the Morgan Greer, published by US Games. The deck I said I would never buy, and now I love. So if you have a deck like that, pop it down in the comments. Is there a deck that you thought, there's no way I'm ever going to get, and then you ended up getting it and loving it? Or have you found that your tastes in decks have changed so that you're now gravitating more towards an art style that previously you really didn't think you'd be able to get along with, and now you're really loving? Yeah, just let's have a discussion. Let's talk about the crazy decks we thought we'd never get. All right, guys. I'm going to be filming a couple more videos, so in case you see a lot of videos with me in this shirt, no, this is not the only shirt that I own. I'm just going to be filming a couple to try to get myself caught up. But until next time, y'all have a great afternoon. Have some fun with some decks, and I'll see you later. Bye.